Okay, so today's kind of about using formulas. This kind of goes back to number 26. Sound like a lot of you got this right. You're asking about it anyway. So a rectangle perimeter. Perimeter just means the distance around. And so usually we call the long side the length and the wide side the width. So this would be the length as well. These two are the same, and these two are the same. So to find the perimeter, the distance around, you need two of these plus two of these, right? So what is L plus L if you add two of those together?
2L.
2L. Why is it 2L and not L squared?
L squared plus L minus L.
Right, that means L times L. What does 2L mean? Well, you guys know that 5 plus 5 is the same thing as 2 times 5. This is kind of what multiplying by 2 means. It's like adding two of them together. So 2L is the same thing as L plus L. Anyways, yeah. So that plus that is 2L plus that is 2W. So this is kind of like 26. That's kind of how it goes. 2 lengths plus 2 widths gives you the perimeter. So this is called a formula. It's something that you create, and then later on when you know what the length and width are, you plug it in. So let's say we knew the length was 8 and the width was 4. We would just plug the length in right there. Brain short-circuited. Plug the width right there, and then that gives you the perimeter. This is a very basic formula, but that's how it works. Just plug stuff in. So you do 2 times 8 plus 2 times 4. All right. So number 1 says x is 4. It says x squared y. Okay. Then in the directions it says x is 4 and y is negative 2. Okay, now, I've talked about this before. Let's see if you guys know this. Let's pretend for a second that x was negative 4. And we'll say y is still negative 2. Should this, if x is negative 4, should x squared come out as positive or negative? Should come out as positive. Will this come out as positive or negative? Just this part right here. This comes out as negative. Because what it does an order of operations. It squares the 4, and then it adds the negative on after that. So this is actually negative 16. But when you're squaring x, you want to square all of x, including the negative. So it should, if you type it in the calculator, it should look like this. Okay, now if x is positive, does it matter if we have parentheses or not? No, because 4 squared is going to be positive no matter what. So anyway, 4 squared, let's see. Drayden, what's 4 squared? 16. Sometimes I get tempted to start playing with these things. All right, anyway, 16 times negative 2. Okay, you can use your calculator. Does anybody know that off the top of their head? 16 times negative 2? Negative 32.
So did we solve these ones?
Yep. Nothing else to do but solve. You can't simplify any of these. They're all as simple as they get. Number 3. Okay. 3 says x plus y over 8. X plus y over 8. Over what? H. Okay, so x is still 4, and y is still negative 2. Here's another way we could get one of these wrong, and h is negative 1, I think. Okay, if I plug this in the calculator, it would be wrong. Does anybody know why?
Order of operations.
Yeah, what's the order of operations supposed to be?
X plus Y.
Right, top first, bottom first, well, there's nothing to do on the bottom, but if there was something, and division last. So how do we make it happen? Well, some of you have the division, or the fraction button, that would work. Fraction button does it too. If you use the division symbol though, you would need parentheses. Actually, maybe all of you have the fraction button. So you may have a TI. Well, that one has a fraction button. So maybe you guys are all good if you use that. Okay, anyway, let's see. Allison, 4 plus -2 divided by -1. So it's kind of like this. What's 2 divided by -1? Do you know what, huh? Do you know what 2 divided by 1 is? 2. And when there's one negative, it makes it negative. So it's just -2. Yeah, dividing by 1 is the same thing as multiplying by 1. It doesn't really do anything. But the negative part switches it when you're, okay, number 5. This one's a little confusing. X over y plus z over h. So 4 over -2 plus 4/5 over -1. This is a little confusing because it's like a fraction inside of a fraction. Clara, what's 4 divided by -2? 1 negative makes it negative. Maybe you said that. Or not. Okay. So, yeah, that'd be -2. How about this? This kind of goes back to what Allison just did. 4/5 divided by -1. What does dividing by 1 do? Same. No. Yeah, the negative. So you could say -4/5, or you could just say -4/5. You guys know this? Anybody know this one? -2 plus -4/5. Yeah. It's kind of like if I have 2 cookies and then 4/5 of a cookie, how many cookies do I have? 2 and 4/5. But this is take away 2, take away 4/5. So you're taking away 2 and 4/5. All right. We need a pair of glasses. X cubed minus z cubed. Oh gosh, this is a mess. Okay. Yeah, this is where I would get the calculator out. So x is 4 and then z was 4/5. Okay. Kinsey, you remember 4 cubed off the top of your head, maybe? I think we've seen it once or twice. Anybody remember 4 cubed? 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4? No, nobody remembers? 64. Okay, you guys know how to do 4/5 cubed? It's 4/5 times 4/5 times 4/5. In other words, it's 4 times 4 times 4 over 5 times 5 times 5. So really it's just 4 cubed over 5 cubed. So 4 cubed is still 64. 5 cubed, 5 times 5 is 25. 5 25s, like $1.25. Okay, now if I was doing this by hand, I'd have to do that over 1 and need a common denominator, so I'd have to multiply by 125. I'm just gonna do this in my head real quick. Brain, 63 and 61 1/25. You guys buy that? The other class did. I impressed the other class. Number 9, h squared. Okay, this is one of those things. So, -1. Let me write this down. H squared plus 1 squared minus x cubed. What was y? -2. X was 4, I think. Alright, did I write it correctly? No, I didn't. What did I do?
The 2 in parentheses.
Well, yeah. We have to square all of -1, and we have to square all of -2. X is 4, so this wouldn't be in the parentheses, because we're only squaring the 4 on this one. Now, it doesn't really matter if you're cubing anyway, because 4 cubed minus 4 cubed, if you cube a negative, 3 negatives still make a negative, so it doesn't really matter in that case, but anyway. Okay. Rain, what's -1 squared?
1,
-2 squared?
4,
Remember this one from earlier?
64.
Yeah. So 1 plus 4 is 5, and 5 minus 64, well, it's definitely negative.
59.
Yeah, except, yeah. -59. It's like $5 lose 64, that's what it's saying. So you're way in debt. Alright. Okay, little formula word problems. It says use the formula P equals 0.433H. Let me write that down real quick. Determine how much additional pressure you will feel from water when you dive to a depth of 32 feet. So, what is this formula telling us based on what that just said? Okay. Yeah, it's P must stand for pressure. So you guys know, have you ever like dove to the bottom of a, I don't know, 8 feet deep swimming pool or something? Nobody's gone very deep. What happens? You feel it in your ears, like it starts to squeeze in. Did you guys hear about the, there's a submarine from like 1 or 2 years ago that
Oh, yeah.
imploded because the pressure was too big. The submarine wasn't,
Tested.
yeah, it wasn't ready for that depth and it collapsed in. Anyway, kind of besides the point. Yeah, this is why, because the deeper you get. So, why do you think they put an H there? What do you think this H stands for?
Height.
Yeah, which they probably should have called it D for depth though, but I guess they used H for height. So, yeah, the deeper you go, the higher your pressure is going to be basically. So they told us the depth is 32, so guess what? We just put 32 right there. That's it. So they're not trying to fool you yet. So you just do 0.433 times 32. And let's see, that says 13.856 PSI. You guys know what that stands for? When you fill up tires, they use that same abbreviation. It's called pounds per square inch, the way we measure pressure. I guess the rest of the world might use kilos per square inch. I don't know. Never heard of it. All right. Number 12 says convert 8 degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit. The Celsius to Fahrenheit converter is on, let's see what page. It's on the bottom of 51. F equals 9/5 C plus 32. Okay, so they give you the Celsius, you plug it right there, 9/5 times the Celsius temperature plus 32. And that will tell you the Fahrenheit temperature. All right, for 13, let's see, I guess we're on that one. It says, Mr. Denton wants to put a fence around his rectangular garden, but first he needs to know the perimeter. if his garden is 60 feet long and 20 feet wide, how many feet of fencing does he need? 60 feet by 20 feet. All right. Eleanor, remember the perimeter of a rectangle formula? Huh? No, that's the area. You guys will do that next year for geometry. Yeah, there's kind of a couple types of measurement. One is how big is the rectangle based on how many squares fit inside of it. That would be 20 times 60. That's called area. But we're doing perimeter, which means how far around is it?
60 times 60 times 20.
No, not quite.
60 times 2 and 20 times 2.
Right. Yeah, you could say 60 plus 60 plus 20 plus 20, or 60 times 2 plus 20 times 2. The formula, which I wrote down at the beginning, it's also in your books on the table on page 52. There's some formulas over there. Is 2 lengths plus 2 widths. Whoops. So it's 2 times 60 plus 2 times 20. So it's 120 plus 40, which is 160 feet of fencing. Okay, 14, they're kind of asking the same thing. What's the perimeter of the picture frame? They ask another question about, like, why is the frame not big enough or something. But you don't have to answer that part. So you can just do, the frame is 11 inches by 14 inches. So it's a rectangle, just like this one. So you can just use the same formula. Find the perimeter of the frame. All right, 15. A carpenter plans to cut formica to go around the outer edge of a circular table with a 2-foot radius. Find the circumference of the table using pi is about 3.14. So determine the length of the piece of formica. So it's a circular table and we want to go around the circular table. What's that called? Bella, do you remember what that's called? Yeah. Does anybody remember the circumference formula? It's also, let's see, where is it at? Also, it's right under the rectangle formula on kind of the middle of page 52. Nobody? Other class had a couple people that remembered it. That is the area formula, which is kind of like the rectangle. That's different than the going around it. That's how much fits inside it. It's 2 times r times pi. 2 times the radius times pi. So in this case, the radius is also 2, and pi is about 3.14. You probably have a pi button on your calculator. It's much more accurate than 3.14. It'll give you maybe more decimal places than you need to go. So that comes out as 12.56. Moving and grooving. All right. Volume of a rectangular box can be found by using the formula V equals LWH. You guys know what these words or letters stand for? Length width height. You guys have done this before. Maybe, was it last year you did a little bit of geometry? No, 2 years ago maybe? Okay. So volume is equal to, this is talking about 3-dimensional volumes, another kind of measurement. Do that next year, but anyway, this just means, what does it mean when the letters are right next to each other? Multiply. So it's just times times. So it's 10 times 3 times 2 on this one. So it is 60 inches. And this is how you label volumes, because it's like a three-dimensional measurement. You put a little 3 on the, like a little exponent on the inches. Okay. Number 19, they put the formula in the directions again. It says x, y squared, z. Very simple little formula. X, y squared, z. And then on 19 it says x is 2, y is 3.8, z is negative 2. 2, 3.8, negative 2. Okay, you could put this in parentheses, but it's not necessary. There's no negative to worry about on that one. So that comes out as negative 57.76. Okay, 21 and 22, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. On 21, it says x equals a, y equals a, and z equals a. So how are we going to do that? If x equals a, y equals a, z equals a. Alright, so how do we do that?
We would add the exponents.
Add the exponent. What's the exponent on the first one? So that is a to the fourth. Okay, 22 says x is, what did it say? C cubed, c to the negative 2. C cubed, c to the negative 2. So what would that look like? Well, first one is c, right? Still using this formula. C times, now how would we do this one now? Okay, c cubed is what y is. Now how do we square that though? Parentheses, yes. All of this needs to be squared. And then c negative 2 over here. So how did we do this? Right there. Multiply. 3 times 2 is 6. So it's almost done. It's kind of like the last problem. Just add the exponents when you're multiplying the base. Alright. That is it. Any questions? Yeah. Yep.